Dark Satellite Media.
I made up 100 reasons. I have turned my back on everything I knew. I have justified my actions, been denied satisfaction. I believe tonight, put away the truth. All to be with you, 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 all to be with you.
Hey guys,
Brea.
how's it going?
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I should change my name when we do this. I don't know why. I always keep the band name up. I'm Sam.
Yes.
That's Brian.
Hi.
And you're Brea Grant. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, man.
I know that, podcasts are plenty, and so we appreciate your time. And I really, to just kick it off, like the two movies that I really like, your IMDb, obviously, like all your credits are pretty phenomenal. But there's two movies in particular that I kind of just wanted to talk to you about. Lucky, as well as 12-Hour Shift.
Okay, cool.
So basically, I'm going to start off with Lucky. I watched it, and it's up on Shudder. You wrote and you star in it. And then what was the director's name?
Natasha Kermani.
Okay, yeah. So just kind of like a really heavy movie, but also in a land of like surrealism, which is what I love about it. It's like this, it's such a serious thing, but it's almost like before we continue, I don't want to give anything away of these two movies.
Yes.
So that we're gonna basically just
try not to spoil things here.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna tiptoe around.
Yeah.
But what I like about this movie a lot is just like the surrealism, based in something that's very real and pretty traumatic and stuff. So like, how would you describe Lucky to anyone listening?
Yeah, I mean, the way Natasha and I've been kind of describing it is, it is a horror movie. It is, and it kind of is wearing the skin of a slasher. It's not quite a slasher. Obviously, I'm playing with the tropes of the slasher within the writing, but then I think we go elsewhere. I call it a surrealist slasher. You can call it whatever you want. I mean, I also think it's a satire. I mean, as dark as it is, I think there's a lot of funny moments in it, and it was written to have moments where you laugh. Moments where you're laughing at the absurdity of the situation.
Yeah, pretty much so. Like there's like certain scenes, especially somewhere in the middle, like where you're talking to the doctor and stuff like that. And it really takes like, a turn, a movie that kind of obviously completely very different, but the movie Mother made me feel the same way. Darren Aronofsky's Mother, like these two movies just like build this tension. And, but there are those moments where you're just like, am I dreaming? Like what's really going on here? Like all these serious things and stuff. So, what was like the inspiration to write something like this? Because it's very well done. And like you said, it's part slasher. It's even like Home Invasion. Home Invasion to me is very much like the last frontier for fear, because as we get older and we become, we're still horror fans, there's nothing that's really scary except for things that you feel like can happen. So this is one of those situations where a Home Invasion is thrown in it as well. But if you just kind of like, how did you come up with Lucky?
Yeah, that's interesting. It is a little bit like a slasher grown up, because we're not at like a summer camp. We're not at a college or anything like that. It's definitely like an adult woman having to deal with a slasher situation. It's based on experiences I had in my real life that I kind of just mined for entertainment purposes. What we do with our trauma when we are when we are filmmakers. It came from an experience with a stalker for me. And then obviously, I mean, I think the metaphors in the movie are pretty obvious, but you know, taking that and just running with it. And because what I found was when I was dealing, you know, with the court system and with the anytime I would tell anyone that's what I was going through, particularly women, would all be like, yeah, of course. Like there was not a woman who I met who didn't have some sort of story where she was in danger. Even if it's just, you know, I was walking down the street and someone was following me, somebody showed up at my house, you know, like things like that. Every woman has that story. So it just felt like a very easy jump to make this a world in which every woman literally has that story, but it is literally a, you know, a super scary horror stalker.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just amazing, you know, to watch you, you know, just your career and, you know, the writing, especially in this, is like so freaking great. You know, because I watched you back with Best Friends Forever, I think it was too.
Thank you.
I love apocalyptic stuff too. So
Me
like
too.
I'm a big fan. Shout out to Miracle Mile for sure. But just every great movie too. Like I feel like I know you were a musician, so.
Many years ago, long time ago.
well, I mean, I'm still a musician, and we're all from the same punk world. So, but music or like the score to this was who's Jeremy Zuckerman.
Mm-hmm.
How good was
really
he?
brilliant.
It's great. He's really good. Yeah.
I loved how dissonant it all was, especially during the attack scenes. It reminded me of like Stravinsky, like real off notes, but it helps to unsettle you, you know, just visually and through the ear.
Yeah, we were very lucky to get him. He was attached to the movie from before we started shooting. I think he came on board, and Natasha was a big fan of his, but he had done the Scream series on MTV, and he's done a bunch of other big movies, but she listened to his work and you know, loved what he did for Scream, but it's a much more straightforward score. But I think she really approached him and was like, we're going to do something really weird. And I had heard some of his more experimental stuff, and they really bonded on that because she plays in that experimental world as well, obviously, when you watch the movie. But yeah, we were really lucky with that. And I think personally, you could go with a really traditional score on this movie. You could go with a traditional score on any movie, but when you're making these movies, you know, we made this movie in 15 days for a micro budget. If you make a movie like this, you have to take some big swings, and like score is a place that you can always do that. It's a place where you can play, and you have a little bit more time and a little bit of place where you can do something a little edgier and not have to worry about like a studio system being like too weird, you know, like you're never going to have to deal with that.
So like when you make, you know, as a movie maker, you know, you get a score like that. But we also grew up on, like, I know that you're a big, I think you're a Tarantino fan, right? Did I?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, we all are. He's like,
he's like, we're of the age.
Yeah, for sure. So, but like, and so when you see like something like Death Proof, you're like, oh shit, you're like, this dude is going for the deep cuts. But, you know, like, how is it when you make a movie that you know, it's like, you could have put songs all over this, but the instrumental just works. So like, how, as a filmmaker, how do you look at like songs versus instrumentals?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, so I didn't direct Lucky, so I can't speak to that.
Okay.
But in Best Friends Forever, it's a lot of songs. But my second movie, 12-Hour Shift, which also came out last year, with same time as Lucky, or I guess Lucky came out this year. Who could say? Time is weird. Yeah, I actually wanted some songs in it, but I mean, as an indie filmmaker, it's tough because you're trying to, like, if you don't know the band, it's a lot of negotiating with labels and negotiating with you know, over the rights and the what do you call it? It's not copy. That's the different with.
Yeah, it's like where it's like, because I mean, you could only play like 10 or 15 seconds sometimes.
Royalties.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, or 0 seconds, I think, if you're going to actually sell the movie. If you want to like play in a festival, you can usually do something, but so it's just it's incurring costs, and also it definitely is a different kind of movie, you know, and if you haven't I mean, one thing I think, like, especially I think about like James Gunn or somebody like that who puts a lot of really great songs into his movies. You know, I think he's thinking about those and probably has the rights to them before he shoots. Whereas a lot of us are at this level of filmmaking, we're making the movie and we're just trying to make the movie. You know, like we don't have the time to try to like get the songs beforehand. For 12-Hour Shift, I did try to get a couple of songs beforehand because I knew I had a couple of sequences. There were going to be montages and they were going to be I wanted something cool over them, but all the bands I contacted, I couldn't get the rights to the songs I had tried to get. So
did you keep in touch with anyone like that still plays music from like growing up in like East Texas, like that punk scene? Like, I mean, if I still play music, I'm sure you know someone who still plays music.
Oh yeah, well my boyfriend is John Congleton, who was in a band called the Paper Chase, and we met playing music when I was a teenager, and he was like 21, and he's now a music producer. So he still puts out albums too sometimes. But yeah, he's our house is a music house. You can literally see like our records back there. There's a music studio in the downstairs of our house right now because of the quarantine. So yes, I know a ton of people who play music for sure. It's also, I think it's finding the right song and finding the right vibe. And there are definitely songs like I keep on playlists that I know at some point I want to use, but it's finding that, like, for example, 12-Hour Shift was set in the 90s. So I wanted I kept trying to find songs from the 90s that I thought would work. But the problem is the songs I like from the 90s can be a little crunchy, if that makes sense. Like the guitars are a little crunchier, and it just, every time I put one in, it was like, I think it just like doesn't quite feel like the movie I'm trying to make.
It like takes away from the scene kind of. I know our buddy Rob is making a mixtape documentary that should be coming out. Just out of curiosity, like back then, like let's say in like 1995, what are 5 songs that Brea would have put on a mix?
Oh my God, I can't believe you didn't ask me this beforehand because I'm not going to be able to come up with anything.
Okay.
95. So
I mean, just in the 90s. It doesn't matter.
In the 90s. Okay. And I apologize. This is what happens when we do stuff from home. My gardener is here, apparently.
Listen, I for the first 5 minutes, I was super nervous to talk to you. So
okay. All right. Well, now the gardener will just be in the background. And
fine.
Just so you'll know, my yard will look great after this.
My cat's going to be down here meowing in a second too. So it's all right.
This is where we're at. It's very funny. There's a ice cream truck that comes by my house around 3 or 4 every day, and I'm almost always in a meeting, and they're always like, "What is that?" It's an ice cream truck. Okay. In the 90s, 95 I would have been 14. So 95 to like 99 would be very different music, because at 14 I was just then getting into like punk music. So I would have also still been listening to like Hole.
Okay.
But I would have started to listen to like Minor Threat and Operation Ivy and 14, I was pretty young. So, and then like in the next few years, I discovered sort of like new school punk is what I would call it. Like, so it was very like Lagwagon and like bands like Face to Face, like bands like that. And then
love Face to Face.
Yeah. And then I got into like, this is embarrassing, but like the ska scene of the 90s. So some of those bands would have been on there as well.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, it was much more like I got into a little bit. It was a long 4 or 5 years, the 90s for me. I got more into like.
We're from Long Island, so we know the ska scene.
Oh, great, great. Yes. Yeah, I was in an all-girl ska band for a hot minute called Shut Up and Dance, which is the greatest ska band name.
Great name.
Such a good one. I can't believe no one else used it. We were not popular.
What do you play? What's your instrument of choice, or what's your background?
I played drums.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was. I lived in a small town, and basically, a bunch of my friends and I were like, we should start a band. None of us played instruments. So it was a little bit of an assignment. Like, okay, you go learn to play drums and you learn to play guitar. And one of the girls had already sort of learned to play guitar. So I kind of just took on drums.
Yeah, that's the way it is, man.
That's how it always starts. It's like, usually there's 2 guitar players, and then one of them that doesn't play as good. You're like, you know what? Play the bass.
You gotta play the bass. Yeah, that's so true. So true.
So in the 90s and like growing up in Texas, just a quick question, because they're one of my favorite bands. Did you ever get a chance to see at the drive-in?
Oh, yeah. That's what I was actually about to say, is that by the time I got to like when I was like 17, 18, I got more into like bands like that. Yeah, I saw them. I know I at least saw them at Emos in Austin at one point, but I think I saw them at Rubber Gloves in Denton, which was like a club in Denton for a long time. But yeah, I loved them. That was actually one of the songs I tried to get for my movie because they have a song that's like there's like hospital stuff happening and it's about losing.
Yeah.
And all of their stuff. Well, I mean, this is not very interesting, but as a filmmaker,
It
it's
is.
interesting to find out that it was all of their stuff.
We love
stuff
it.
is owned by one of the huge ones. So even an email, I emailed, I called, no one ever even responded to me on that stuff. Weirdly, I got responses because for a minute I was going to use Salt and Pepper's "Push It." Got responses to that song, but never heard back from the people from At the Drive-In. Which
That's
is
weird.
crazy.
Well, after they listen to this, they're gonna call.
Oh, and I have no idea what version you saw. I'm sure you didn't see this version, but the version that played festivals, we actually had the song about it for like a few months, and now I have no idea what the song. Oh, I Was Living in a Devil-Town by oh my God, wow, my brain. Austin singer songwriter. Johnson. Wow. This is what my
Daniel
brain is.
Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel Johnson.
Yeah.
Which is a song you can't tell because my brain is never on, but I've liked for a really long time and always used to put on mixtapes when I was in high school, and so I got the rights to that song. I was in the editing sound, and we were still trying to get the rights to his voice. Like we had the rights to do the song, but not the rights to his actual recording of it. And he passed away while we were doing it, so we couldn't get the rights. So I ended up getting someone to cover it.
Yes, which is like the next best thing, especially for a song like that. Unfortunately, I mean, if that's what you're supposed to, if you have to do that, then I'm all for it. I mean, I think the show Sons of Anarchy would always do that. You'd always hear like this like random cover. You're like, why? And I'm like, what? Jimmy Page won't give you the okay for this one?
Yeah, exactly. And someone else owns the rights to the actual song. But the problem was we only got the rights for the festival run, and then which sucks because that movie didn't get as much of a festival run as it should have because of the pandemic. And then once the movie came out, we couldn't actually get the rights to it.
Yeah.
Before we released it. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I at the Drive-In was signed to Grand Royal, which was Mike D's label. That's what I totally remember when that came out. And they broke up, and I think they bankrupt the label. So, but shout out to them. They're one of my favorite bands.
Yes.
Yeah, they're great. They're really good.
But I know that talking about going back to Lucky, The Mask is really interesting. It's like simple, but like eerie enough, and how did that come about? Like it seems simple, but it's just so effective.
Yeah, he did a good job. In the script I just said he was wearing a mask. I never got descriptive on it because I think you can go a little far with that stuff, and unless it's like super relevant, it's not that important for the story I was trying to tell. So once we got greenlit, Natasha brought Jeff Farley on board, who's been doing effects stuff for a really, really long time. And her idea was, that it would just be sort of see-through. And then I don't know if you can tell, but in some shots you might be able to see it, but on every mask, the man has the name of his victim written across the mask. So I have the one here from that is May's mask, but it's like a weird little Easter egg that I think it's hard you're not supposed to be able to see it. It looks kind of like scratches, but it actually is a name across every single one of them.
I love watching movies like this. Like I love the Easter eggs like that. Now, as far as like masks go, like do you have like any movies that stick out to you as like maybe your favorite mask that you've seen? I mean, we could always say for me, I'll throw in like William Shatner, like the Halloween. It's just so like it's like the best because it's almost like what happened with Lucky. Like it seemed like a simple idea, but
very devoid of expression. There was no, you know what I mean?
You know what's weird is that I read the script a long time ago for The Strangers. I was like one of my jobs was I was a script reader for many years and would like read them. Like people in LA don't read scripts. So I'd give like I worked for like a manager and he'd be like, read the script and tell me what it's about. And if it's good. And I read the script for The Strangers and I was like, this is not good. I just didn't think it was good. I thought, I was like, I don't know. The masks seem really corny, whatever. That's like one of my favorite movies. And it's like, and it's in part just the execution, but it's also the masks really worked. Like everything really worked in that movie at the end of the day.
Brian Bertino, first of all, I mean, like, you want to talk about a guy who makes movies that are very slow but effective. Holy shit, that and we're going to talk about, you know, Shudder, which, you know, Lucky is on. The Dark and the Wicked, his movie.
I've heard it's good. I have not watched it yet. It looks too horrifying, honestly. He had this movie though a few years ago called Blackbird.
Okay,
Blackbird?
No. I never saw that.
It was a found footage movie set in the 90s or something. So it was, people would get these old video cameras sent to their house. So maybe it was even 80s. It was like the kind of video camera you like had to put on your shoulder and like had an actual VHS tape in it.
Yeah.
So they get sent to their house and they start recording and then things would start happening. It was like 3 different storylines and it was great. And it was like before people were really watching stuff on VOD. So it went straight to VOD and I feel like no one saw it. And it was so good. It was so well done.
That is so true because like that was like the kiss of death. Remember that? Like you would just go there and it's like, oh, that movie just like totally left. Now it's like as soon as a movie comes out, I'm like Googling just as soon as I see watch. Is that you?
That's a dryer. I apologize.
Okay.
I think
laundry day.
I think your boxers are done. But yeah, so like as soon as I Google, it says watch movie and like I just go, it's like I have no problems renting movie on YouTube. I have like every streaming app. You know, actually, all right, so let me just switch gears. The Stylist, which is a new movie you're in, is on the Arrow app.
Yeah.
I went through the Arrow app. It looks amazing.
Yeah, it does. I actually, Jill, the director, texted me because, you know, I've already seen it. So I was like, well, I'm not going to, whatever. She texted me. She's like, actually go download the Stylist app. The Stylist app that should be the Arrow app and check it out because there's so many special features. And I was like, what? So I went and looked and it's like 4 or 5 behind the scenes videos about the Stylist. There's a whole like little documentary about the Stylist and about women who work like working class kind of jobs or specific kind of jobs. And there's a bunch of stuff about 12-hour shift in there and a movie called Satanic Panic, like in this little documentary.
Love that.
Yeah.
movie.
And it was like on the Arrow player. And I was like, oh, this is the future where you like, you get the player for the movie, but really like you're sticking around for all those extra features because you don't get to see that shit on Netflix and stuff. And that is such a bummer because I love, especially like, I mean, I'll tell you, like I watched every episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and we watched all of the commentary and all of everything that was on every DVD. And now I don't really buy physical DVDs anymore just because I find, I don't know, there's only so much space in my house, you know, and we fill it with records. So So like I that was like where I was like, oh, people need to catch on to this. Like this is like it made the app like super cool.
Oh man, so you know, like everyone on the planet, like you know, when you think of an app, it's like, oh, $5 a month, it's whatever. I have like 10 of them that go in. So same. I'm like, all right, maybe I'll get rid of the Paramount Plus now that the Real World's done. And but that Arrow app looked great. The Stylist looks really good. My girlfriend owns a salon, so like I was just like, we got to watch it together. But yeah, so you know, going to, you know, finishing up with Lucky here because I really want to get to 12-hour shift, which I genuinely think is like a fucking masterpiece.
Oh, thank you.
Like I think I'm just gonna like completely gush over that movie. So you know, to finish up with Lucky, it's gonna be up on Shudder. And did you ever get a chance to watch it with an audience? No, right?
No, we were supposed to premiere last year at South by Southwest. And that was the first festival that got canceled. I was literally with Natasha and we have the same manager. We were all just having coffee being like, can't wait to go to South by Southwest. I mean, there were already like rumblings that it might get canceled. And we got the call while we were there and we were like, what the hell do we do now? And then we just went straight to a bar. Like we were horrified. And then it played a bunch of places and I mean, as many of the digital festivals as we can do. And we had a cool experience because I got to like, there were a lot of people who got to see it. I think that may not have gotten to see it because they couldn't go to a festival, but they were willing to like pay to go to like Fantasia, or whatever online. So we got to talk to some people, and we did a lot of a lot of Q&As online, tons of Zoom Q&As. But what's nice is that Shudder has a really nice built-in audience. So now that it's out in the world, I feel like people are seeing it. I would have loved to have seen it with an audience, though. I would have loved to see both of those movies with an audience, and I didn't get to.
I'm a movie guy. I mean, growing up too, like I'm sure we're all kind of of that era. And I just recently got a chance to go back to the movies finally. It felt great. Yeah. I saw Nobody. I thought it was amazing.
Oh, cool. I'm going to see Mortal Kombat right after this.
Oh, okay. Sweet.
Cool. But yeah, so like I tell everyone, same thing with Brian. Like we love Lucky, and any chance I get, I love. That's a Dread epic picture.
Yeah, it's yes.
Okay,
yeah, because the way you said it, I was like, Dread epic. Yes, it is like a Dread. Yeah. The Dread label under epic or whatever. Yeah.
This, I think Lucky and Harpoon are like the two best things that they did. So.
Oh, cool.
Harpoon is fantastic.
Thank you.
Cool. So I just, I know that you're, we're not going to take up a lot of your time, but I just really wanted to talk about 12-hour shift and just, it's amazing when you see someone, with your first film and then you write and direct this, and it's so good.
Oh, thanks.
It's so good. Let's talk about the opening scene. I think the opening scene, it's like you have this like breather before she walks into the hospital and this world that just she's in, because from that moment on, it's like pure madness. How did you come through with that first scene? Were you thinking like, let me just ease them in?
No, it's so funny you say that. So I had a very elaborate shot designed for that scene that like went from like, it was just elaborate. There was like, it went to like here and then here. And it was like all this movement and all this stuff. And on the day we were supposed to shoot it, the little camera, the camera broke that we were going to be using because it was a different camera than we were using every other day, basically. And we couldn't get it to work. So it was like, okay, so this is now going to be not I wanted it to be very smooth and cool and whatever. So instead now it's handheld for the very first part.
Punk rock.
Yeah. And then we settle in on Mandy, Angela Bettis's character. And when we were editing it, there was a lot of like, oh, should we go back and forth, whatever. And I was like, I think we just sit with her, it felt like, I think in part I had just watched this movie called The Wind. And I don't know if you've seen that horror movie, but it does this very brave thing where it's just in this giant wide for this whole opening and all this violent things happen, but it's super wide. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, I know what movie I'm getting into. And I was like, I think that's it. It's her movie. Like, we want to know what movie we're kind of like getting into. Is like, we sit with these two women and like, we hear their conversation, because this is very much what the movie is about, is like the day-to-day life of these two kind of women. And they're interchangeable, really, like the two women in the open, even though you don't see the other one again to the end. So it just felt to me like you should just sit there and have to listen to this whole conversation between these two women.
It's so it's so real. Like for someone who comes from like we talked about Tarantino. Like Tarantino's dialogue is just so good, and I felt like the beginning was just like such a normal conversation. I thought the casting is great, and the casting in general is such a huge thing. Sometimes you see a movie, I mean, maybe I'll just say Friday the 13th, the remake. I don't know. Maybe I'll just, like something like that, where it's like these characters just don't look like it. I don't know. It doesn't work. But this in particular, and I got to say, Angela Bettis, amazing.
Killed it.
Yeah, she's so good.
And Mick Foley from Issatalkit, man. Like, he grew up down the block, the town over from me. So how the hell did you end up, were you like a wrestling fan?
Not really. No more than like, I think kids were in the 90s, I think kids in the 90s liked wrestling. And I had an older brother and some cousins. And so I was familiar enough with wrestling. But yeah, when we started doing casting, a bunch of, David Arquette was on from the beginning, and his wife, Christina, and they were like do you want any wrestlers in this, you know, for any of the roles? And I was just like, well, I only can really name one wrestler, and it was Mick Foley. And they asked him, and came down for a day, signed a ton of autographs while he was there. It was really nice, and then left. It was a very it was very lovely working experience.
That makes sense. Another thing that I want to say, the direction on this was particularly brilliant. I think you did. It's amazing. So like, you know, from your first movie to this, you know, it's like you had 7 years of like, I guess, learning and like you just, you know, it's just amazing to see like the progression. And I got to say, the chapel scene.
Oh, cool.
How cool is that? The colors. And I feel like it was like kind of like such a dark conversation in such a holy place, you know, like. Yeah.
It was not in the original script, the chapel, because I didn't know where we were going to be shooting. So everything was just in a hospital in various corners or outside or whatever. And then we got to the location and there was a chapel there. And my producers were like, do you want to use this? So we ended up setting obviously a couple of key scenes there. But yeah, it worked out really well to have that. It's a very small chapel, like whatever. It's like it's shot pretty wide, but it is teeny. So shooting there was like a lot, but yeah, it's in part like just a testament to those women. They're just very good at what they do.
They were so good.
And they're very open to like, I mean, I work in television, some as a director, and like, obviously once like on certain things, you're not allowed to change stuff, but I love changing stuff of my own on the day. Cause I'll hear it coming out of my actors' mouths and I'm like, this is not the right line. It's not right. And so, and I think my actors, most of them really like it. Cause I'm like, okay, this is not the right line. Like, let's come up with something else. Like we do a whole bunch of improvising. We do a lot of like finding what's right in that moment, because the words I'm always willing to fuck with. I have a lot of like very specific ideas about the look or like where the camera is going to be and things like that I'm like less willing to mess with on the day. But the actors all know that I'm very much like, oh, this line doesn't work, or you have a funnier line, or this line, we don't even need it. Like, just let me know. And then we kind of like work through it.
I love that. Yeah, for sure. I completely love that. So as far as like direction, like for an influence like you, like, can you think of, you know, like a couple of movies where the direction blew you away? Because this direction blew me away. So I just want to know,
thanks.
Maybe your influence.
I mean, there are definitely movies that I could think of, but I mean, the lamer answer is that I've been working in the film industry full time since 2007, 8-ish. Like that's when I quit my day job. So I'll consider that like my mark of being in the film industry. And I've just worked with so many directors and I've watched them over the years. I mean, it's so weird because I was hanging out with some of the girls who I was in Halloween 2 with, and I was talking to them about like what we're doing. And I was like, oh, I'm just mostly focusing on directing now. And they were all like, yeah, of course, we know that about you. Like we could see it even when you were just acting and doing nothing else. It was like very clear that that's what you were interested in because you were always watching that instead of like paying attention to the acting. So I think like watching directors, I've like been able to take bits and pieces from the ones that are doing interesting things to me, you know, like over the years, like even if it's just like a minor thing or things that I don't find interesting, y'all, it's just going to get louder. So I'm going to move to a different room. I feel so bad. It's so loud.
It's fine. Thank you so much. You know,
I mean, it's going to be loud no matter where I am, but at least in this room, it won't be quite
not
as
a problem.
Yeah, it won't be as pretty, but yeah. So I would say like, just as far as directors go, like, there are ones that I love and ones I study definitely, like when I'm going through, you know, especially in prep, like this one I watched a ton of hospital stuff, but I also watched a ton of just like really fast paced, like dialogue stuff, like Tarantino, like Edgar Wright.
The two best.
Yeah.
Those are the two
yeah,
best.
Like some very like, just like the quick cuts, quick stuff. But then also watching like what indie filmmakers were doing right now, because I think there's just like such a cool thing happening with a lot of indie folks. Coen Brothers, like I watched a lot of that to prep.
That's what I got. I got Coen. I got Coen.
Yeah. You know what? There's so many Coen Brothers movies I didn't even see, and people kept talking about them. And my boyfriend's a huge fan, so I was like, we should watch some Coen Brothers movies so that way at least like I know. And then when I watched them, I'm like, oh right, yeah, I do see it. It's just like there's some I just don't even remember, but I mean, obviously they were big influences on me.
Because I think every character in this movie has this like it's such a real situation, just like in your other movie, but like some of these characters are just in their own planet. like the security guard. Like he's
Mhm.
like, just to talk about Marilyn Manson like that. I laughed out loud during that
Oh, good.
scene.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
because
that's one of my favorite lines.
I remember that Wonder Years story. I remember the rib story, and it was just such a great thing to just like throw in there for like people like me. So
Yeah. Real 90s reference. Yeah, my goal was to make sure that like I wanted people to go like, well, what's that guy doing on the other parts of the movie? You know, I wanted if you could literally go in and make a movie about each character and what they were doing when they weren't on screen. That was one of my goals, and I was really fortunate because I worked with a lot of great improv actors and also a lot of actors I already knew or trusted. So I knew they would come in and like I just like would have calls with them ahead of time and be like, okay, I think your character's thing is this. Like maybe he carries around a Walkman all the time. I don't know. Like I would just come up with stuff and they'd be like, ooh, like there's a character who walks around and he's always taking notes. And that actually wasn't in the script. And he and I kind of came up with that in a pre-call before we started shooting. And he's like, oh yeah, like what if I'm really nosy and I'm always taking notes? And I was like, great, that's exactly what that's your character now. Like, and they just kind of, improvisers are so great because they can take one small thing and just build a world from that.
So Easter egg, you just mentioned Halloween 2, which you were in the Rob Zombie one. I love that's my favorite horror franchise. I love Halloween 2, which takes place in a hospital, the original. And this movie takes place in a hospital, and the cop's name is Myers. Was that a little Easter egg?
You know, it probably was in the back of my mind, but I kind of didn't mean for it to. There's all sorts of things that I'm like, people bring up to me and I'm like, I don't know. I've lived this life for so long that I kind of don't mean to, but yes, probably I didn't.
In your subconscious.
Yeah, totally.
That's great. Like we make stuff, like when you make stuff, like everyone's influenced by stuff and it comes out, you know, it's like Nirvana was influenced by the Pixies, but they sound nothing like the Pixies, but to them that, you know, it's like, yeah, this band influenced us. So that's cool.
And you've done so much work in the genre, the horror genre, really good films too. And what's your did you grow up loving horror? Is it something you just kind of gravitated towards later, or what's your background?
Well, yeah, I mean, so as like a teen in the 90s, I was just around for that like 90s renaissance of horror, you know, where you had Scream. I saw Scream on opening night. So, and my, you know, I think like, especially women my age, we grew up watching those movies in the theaters and then going to slumber parties in the years before that, you know, renting movies from the local video store. And like slumber parties were like a place where you watched movies, you know, like we would watch Clue or a horror movie. Like that was like kind of all we would watch. So it's weird because I don't necessarily like, I like if you quizzed me on like a lot of movies, I'd be like, oh, right, I saw that when I was a kid. So I think there's a lot of influences that snuck in, and having an older brother helps as well. And then there's a lot of influences that like, yes, like I watch and like, you know, I loved the movie Tremors growing up. I loved Nightmare on Elm Street. So there was a lot of things like that. And like on top of all of that, I had that weird childhood where the children's shows were scary. You know, when I was growing up, like we had Are You Afraid of the Dark, and we had Labyrinth, and we had like, you know, Return to Oz. Like these were movies like I watched on a regular basis that are not considered horror movies, but like
Return to Oz was
movies?
especially horrifying.
Yeah. So we were talking about like Time Bandits. That's another one.
Yes.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like that ending to Time Bandits. I'm like, how are you gonna do this to me? I'm like 6 years old right now. I can't.
Exactly. Yeah. There's so many like children's movies were horrifying in the 80s. They were so scary.
The Dark Crystal.
Neverending Story.
Yeah.
That I mean, like just a lot of, and I loved those movies. I loved Henson. I loved like anything that was like super kind of supernatural or fantastical. That was like my go-to.
You see David Bowie in the back. He was in Labyrinth.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So just a couple more things here. Like I really wanted to say my favorite scene in this movie is the singing scene. I think it's so brilliant because here you have the two main characters doing horrific things, and then you have like I guess the EMT guy and the other nurse, and they're singing this like kind of Christian song.
Yes.
And it's just so I you know, watching it again for the second time today, I can't say enough about this movie. Like I really think that you like did such a great, like you have two really good movies under your belt in a year, and that's like amazing. So
thank you. Thanks. I like that singing scene too. That was not in the script originally, so that's like a new that was an addition once I got there and saw the chapel. And originally I was trying to get that was one of the songs I was trying to get. I was trying to get a Beastie Boys song, that song Girls, because I thought it'd be funny to be like girls da 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 da, and then have them like killing people to that song. But it was just a big no. I just got a no. I don't know if they don't let people use that song anymore or what the deal is, but I
know they have a weird relationship with that song.
Yeah, but I was like, this is a funny, and I like wrote this in my thing. I was like, look, I'm using it tongue in cheek, and like it's a feminist movie. Like I'm a female filmmaker. I like really pushed it, but literally it was like a straight up no. It's not from them though. It was from the people who own the rights to the songs. Beastie Boys were not involved in that.
Just out of curiosity, you said there's a lot of cool stuff going on in the indie scene. Just in case we don't know about it, just tell us some directors or movies that you've seen recently that maybe we should check out.
Yeah. Sorry, I moved from one room to another, and now like my washing machine's just gonna keep beeping.
Yeah, we'll do 5 more minutes and we'll wrap. No problem.
So sorry. Yeah, I mean, look, I think a lot of good stuff ends up on Shudder, which is very cool. And I think a lot of stuff at festivals. I mean, there's a lot of, what's exciting is I think there's a lot of like cool women making movies now. And then I think there's a lot of new up and coming filmmakers. I'm trying to think of like what I've seen over the pandemic that was good. I saw this movie called Starfish, which is good. And it's basically a mixtape with an apocalypse in the background. And I saw this movie Sweetheart about a girl. So good. She gets washed up on like a desert island, and there's a monster on there, and it's amazing. Sea Fever is amazing. Female filmmaker, all on a ship. Like that should not be as good as it is. I'm sure everyone has seen
The Creature was good on that.
So well done. I loved that movie. I loved it. I was on a panel with her, and I was like, oh, I've never seen this movie. And I watched it and was like completely blown away. So just like a lot of really cool, fun stuff that is happening. And I'm just, it's been nice to see all the cool like indie stuff. And I've been going to like certain festivals for years and years, just like watching all the indie stuff, and it just keeps getting better and better, which is exciting.
I wanted to mention Chelsea Stardust. I thought Satanic Panic was amazing, and her other movie on Hulu, I think it was like All Things We Destroy. Or...
now I'm blanking. This is what happens. I have no idea. But they're both really good. Yeah, she also had a banner year, one year where she had 2 movies back to back that she made.
And the Coraline, I forget the French last name, who did Revenge.
Oh, so good.
Visually, holy Christ, that movie is super violent, but like visually just gorgeous, like Mandy almost, you know? But cool. Listen, I don't want to take up any more of your time, Brian. I don't know if you had anything else, but...
I noticed you have a couple things in post-production. You got to film Night Sky, right? What's this?
Here's the thing about IMDb.
Not accurate.
Once something is added, it is hard to get it off. Yes, Night Sky has been in post for 6 years. I don't know if it's ever coming
okay.
out.
Gotcha.
But it is a great movie. I think it's interesting because there's been like a resurgence of interest in it because that filmmaker he had a movie just premiere at South by. The director's an old friend, and we shot that movie for like a shoestring, like on a road trip. But I have no idea if that will ever see the light of day. I'd like it to. It's quite good.
Well, we'll watch The Stylist because the trailer.
Please watch The Stylist.
So
The Stylist is great. People should definitely check that out and check out the other ones. I mean, as far as other movies, like I'm in another movie called After Midnight that I think is like quite good too.
Oh yeah, because I just saw. Man, I'm trying to remember the connection to Benson and Moorhead, right? Maybe
they produced it. Yeah, they were the producers.
Yes, I just watched Synchronic, which was such a trip.
Yeah, it's great.
So listen, and if you get any Junction June demos, send them my way. Thank you for your time. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you so much.
And
of course.
I will look forward to everything that you do. So will Brian.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
See ya.
satellite media.